Imagine a voice so powerful, so soulful, that it could make even the hardest heart break into pieces. Gladys Knight, known as the Empress of Soul, once filled stadiums with her golden voice, moved millions with songs that spoke of love, pain, and hope, and became a symbol of elegance and talent that transcended generations. But now, at almost 80, the life she leads is a shadow of the glamour and applause she once knew. The world remembers her standing under bright lights, adorned in shimmering gowns, her smile radiant, her energy unstoppable. Yet, behind closed doors, the sparkle has dimmed. How did the woman who sang her way into history, who broke barriers and carved a name that millions revered, find herself in this quiet, lonely existence? The journey from fame to solitude is rarely gentle, and in Gladys Knight's case, it is filled with stories that are both heartbreaking and revealing. Many fans assume that wealth and fame automatically bring happiness, but the reality is far more complex, a maze of emotional trials, family struggles, and private battles that were never shared on stage. At her peak, she was unstoppable, performing tirelessly, balancing a career that spanned decades with personal responsibilities that sometimes felt heavier than any spotlight. But life, as it often does, has a way of testing even the strongest souls. The truth of her current life is not something that tabloids can capture in flashing headlines or superficial gossip. It is a story hidden in the creases of her smiles, in the quiet moments when no cameras watch, and in the whispers of those closest to her who have seen the real struggles behind the legendary voice. And while millions celebrate her music, few understand the sacrifices, heartbreaks, and moments of despair that shape the person behind the performer. The question is not just how she became a star, but how fame, fortune, and public adoration could leave a soul so quietly searching for peace in her later years. There are chapters of her life filled with triumphs that stunned the world, but equally, there are chapters of her life where she faced betrayals, personal losses, and health scares that left scars far deeper than any stage wound could ever inflict. And now, as we look at her life from the outside, it's impossible not to wonder, what does a legend live for when the applause fades and the world moves on? This story will take you behind the curtain, beyond the albums and awards, into the very human, often painful reality of a life that was once adored by millions, and yet now faces a silence few could have predicted. The tale is as mesmerizing as her music, as sorrowful as the notes of her deepest ballads, and as mysterious as the path she has walked since her most glorious days. But to understand why her current life is so sad, we must first travel back to the beginning, to the moments that defined her rise, and the pressures that fame quietly imposed on her. Gladys Knight's journey to stardom was far from easy, and the story behind the glitz and glamour is filled with moments most people never knew. Born in Atlanta, Georgia, her childhood was shaped by a mix of joy, music, and hardship. Singing in church with her siblings, she discovered a voice that seemed destined for greatness. But even at a young age, life tested her resilience. Poverty, strict family expectations, and societal pressures could have broken someone less determined, yet Gladys pushed forward, driven by a desire not just to succeed, but to rise above every obstacle that threatened to hold her back. Her teenage years were marked by relentless practice, countless performances, and the constant feeling that no matter how hard she worked, the world might not be ready to embrace her brilliance. When she and her brother's group, the Pips, started gaining attention, they faced challenges that were not just professional but deeply personal. Touring was grueling, contracts were exploitative, and behind every applause was a story of sacrifice that few understood. The world saw the glamour of awards and sold-out shows, but very few saw the emotional toll, the endless nights away from family, the pressure to maintain a perfect image, and the subtle racism and sexism that often accompanied her rise. And as fame grew, so did the complications in her personal life. Marriages, divorces, and heartbreak shadowed the triumphs on stage, leaving scars that were invisible to the adoring fans. Money could not erase the loneliness she sometimes felt in her private moments, and success could not heal the wounds of betrayal by people she trusted the most. The music industry, as glorious as it seemed, often forced her into choices that weighed heavily on her spirit, leaving a sense of longing that no standing ovation could fill. Even at the height of her fame, she carried a quiet vulnerability, a yearning for simplicity and genuine connection that her stardom often denied her. And as her career continued to soar, the pressures intensified. Every album, every performance, Every public appearance demanded perfection, yet behind the scenes, her personal battles were intensifying. What the public didn't see was how these struggles, layered over decades, slowly shaped the quieter, more somber life she leads today. The woman who once radiated unstoppable energy and joy on stage had begun to face the emotional cost of a life built in the spotlight. And while fans remember the golden voice in timeless songs, the reality of her existence now is painted with loneliness, reflection, and the silent weight of years filled with both triumph and pain. But these struggles are just the beginning of the story, for the next chapters reveal even deeper secrets, hidden betrayals, and life-altering events that the world has never fully understood. To truly comprehend the life Gladys Knight now leads, one must explore the crossroads where fame, family, and personal turmoil intersected, and how these moments quietly led her toward the solitude she experiences today. As Gladys Knight's fame continued to grow, so did the shadows that followed her life offstage. Behind the glamour of sold-out concerts and platinum albums, there were whispers of personal betrayals and heartbreaks that rarely reached the tabloids. Friends and family, who were once close, became distant, and relationships that should have been her strongest pillars sometimes turned into sources of pain. There were rumors of financial disputes, lawsuits, and misunderstandings that clouded her personal life, leaving her to navigate a maze of emotions largely in private. One of the most shocking aspects of her later life is how these pressures seemed to intensify as she aged, creating a sense of isolation that few could imagine for someone who once commanded attention from millions. Even her health, both mental and physical, began to show signs of strain. Though Gladys has always been remarkably private about these struggles, the music that once defined her life became both a refuge and a reminder of what she had sacrificed. Late nights, long tours, and the relentless expectations of fans and industry insiders often left her exhausted, and the people she trusted the most were sometimes the ones who let her down. There are accounts of moments when she felt betrayed by those closest to her, leaving scars deeper than any public disappointment could inflict. Yet, what makes her story even more compelling is the contrast between the warmth and joy she brought to the stage, and the quiet suffering she endured behind closed doors. Her resilience, while remarkable, often came at a cost: loneliness, emotional fatigue, and the subtle ache of dreams deferred or relationships lost. And while the public saw a confident, radiant performer, the private Gladys Knight faced choices that no amount of fame could make easier: whom to trust, whom to forgive, and how to preserve her spirit in a world that sometimes demanded everything and gave little in return. These challenges, layered over decades of an intense career, gradually shaped the quieter, more somber life she now leads. The mystery of her present circumstances lies not in scandalous headlines, but in the private, hidden battles that no audience ever witnesses. Every decision she made, every betrayal she endured, and every sacrifice she offered for her career has contributed to the solitude and reflective existence she experiences today. And as we continue to explore her life, we discover not only the cost of fame, but also the fragile human heart beneath the legend. A heart that has known extraordinary highs and unimaginable lows, yet continues to beat with the echoes of a lifetime of music, love, and endurance. The next part of her story reveals secrets even closer to home, where family, loyalty, and long-held regrets intertwine in ways that left an indelible mark on her soul, shaping the life she lives at nearly 80. A life far removed from the applause and adoration that once defined her. As the years passed, the weight of Gladys Knight's personal life became heavier than even her legendary voice could carry. Family, which once seemed like her anchor, often turned into the storm she struggled to survive. Her marriages brought moments of love, but also seasons of heartbreak, with divorces that left her emotionally drained and spiritually searching. Some of her deepest wounds came not from the stage, but from within her own household: conflicts with loved ones, misunderstandings that never healed, and regrets that linger like shadows. Reports suggest that her financial security, despite decades of success, was not always as strong as fans believed, with legal disputes, mismanagement, and betrayals eating away at the fortune she had worked so hard to build. For someone who gave the world so much beauty through music, it seemed cruel that life returned so much pain and silence. She faced health scares that forced her to step back from the spotlight, each diagnosis reminding her that time was no longer her ally. Her body, once full of energy and resilience, began to slow down, and every performance required more strength than the one before. Yet she rarely let the world see her vulnerability, smiling for fans, singing with passion, but carrying her pain quietly when the curtains closed. Perhaps the saddest part of her story is the loneliness that crept in as the applause faded. Friends who once surrounded her grew distant, many lost to time, others to misunderstandings, and some simply gone forever. Even within her family, rifts formed that could not easily be healed, leaving her surrounded by people yet still feeling alone. It is this solitude, more than anything, that defines her life now at nearly 80, a stark contrast to the roaring crowds of her prime. The legendary Gladys Knight, once unstoppable, now spends many of her days in quiet reflection, her memories both her greatest treasure and her heaviest burden. She has moments of joy, of course, her faith, her grandchildren, the music that will never leave her, but those moments are fleeting, unable to erase the decades of sacrifices and sorrow that built her path. To think that someone who once seemed untouchable, a queen of soul, could now be living in such quiet sadness is almost unthinkable, and yet, it is true. Her journey reminds us of the brutal truth that fame fades, beauty ages, money disappears, but the wounds of the heart often last forever. Still, even in this chapter of solitude, there is something hauntingly powerful about her presence. Gladys Knight may no longer stand in the center of the world stage, but her story continues to hold us captive, because it reveals the fragile humanity that exists beneath every legend. But her tale does not end here, because the final part of her journey, her acceptance, her regrets, and the lessons she leaves behind, is perhaps the most emotional and thought-provoking chapter of all. Now, as we look at Gladys Knight approaching 80, the reality of her life is both poignant and profound. She is no longer the unstoppable force that lit up stages around the world, but her spirit, though quieter, still resonates in the echoes of her music. Her days are spent in reflection, often alone, yet carrying the memories of decades filled with triumphs, heartbreaks, and lessons that only time can teach. The grandeur of fame has faded, but the weight of experience has deepened, leaving her with a wisdom few can ever understand. Every scar, every tear, every moment of joy and sorrow has shaped the woman she has become. A woman who gave everything to her art, her fans and her family, yet sometimes received far less than she deserved. Despite the sadness, there is an undeniable strength in her quiet resilience. She has faced betrayals, lost loved ones, and navigated a world that often demanded perfection, yet she remains, a testament to endurance and talent that refuses to fade. Fans may never truly know the extent of her struggles, but in her solitude lies a story of courage, perseverance, and the human capacity to endure even when the world moves on. Her music continues to touch souls, carrying pieces of her heart with every note, reminding us that greatness is not measured by applause alone, but by the legacy of impact and inspiration left behind. The sadness of her current life does not diminish the brilliance of her past, rather, it highlights the depth of a journey that few could withstand with the same grace. Gladys Knight's story is a mirror to the harsh realities behind celebrity, fame, and fortune, showing us that even icons are not immune to loneliness, disappointment, and the quiet ache of a life fully lived. As we reflect on her journey, we are left with a profound sense of empathy and admiration, understanding that behind every legendary voice is a human being who has loved, lost, and fought tirelessly to keep shining. And in that reflection lies the ultimate truth: life is as fragile as it is beautiful, and the echoes of Gladys Knight's voice remind us of both the triumphs and the sorrows that shape the human experience. Her story leaves a haunting question for all of us. How will we carry our own legacy, our own joy and pain, and how will we be remembered when the lights dim and the applause fades? In the end, Gladys Knight's life is a testament to resilience, a lesson in grace, and a hauntingly beautiful reminder that even legends are human, and even the brightest stars sometimes live in quiet shadow.